Hello and welcome to the Finance Chief podcast, brought to you by BizClick. This is your go-to podcast for all things finance, where we're looking far beyond the P&L and taking a deep dive into the lives and minds of finance professionals from around the world. We want to know what makes a modern leader tick, how they navigate global volatility, and what drives the person behind that prestigious title. If you're ready to move from the spreadsheets to the stories and the insights that shape our industry, well, you're in the right place. My name's Charlie King. I'm the senior editor of Sustainability magazine, and I am the guest host for this episode. So today I am joined by Tom Tildesley, who is Chief Financial Officer at Innovo Group. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Charlie.
Do you want to start off by just sort of introducing yourself, a bit about maybe your career journey and how you found yourself? And you joined Innovo in 2023, is that right?
Yeah, been there 3 years now.
Okay, so cast us back for me.
Okay, so Tom, CFO at Innovo Group, joined there June 2023, so just had my third anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. And before that, I've spent a number of years in senior finance leadership positions in big PLCs, basically. So BP, I got to be one of the founder members of BP Alternative Energy back in 2005.
Very cool.
That was very cool, actually. And then forward that through to Maersk Oil, so a big North Sea oil exploration and production company based in Aberdeen. I was there for a few years, and then a bit of a career change, staying in finance, but went to work for a big nasty tobacco company that aren't a big nasty tobacco company. I'm a big fan of Imperial brands, really to help them on their development into next generation products. So moving away from mainstream tobacco into next gen, so vaping, heated tobacco. And then left there and got offered a job with a big UK house builder, Vistry Group. And then got involved in a big deal where we bought another big listed company, Countryside Out, and as part of that acquisition, I found myself with a new opportunity coming out in Innovo Group. Innovo, we are a young company, so we started in 2021. Mm-hmm. We are based in the UK, but actually we have a long legacy and history in the UAE, so we're probably the largest private family construction company in the UAE. And the family there have been building for pretty much the last 40 years. If you've ever been to Dubai and you've seen a lot of the amazing buildings that are out there, we've been a key part in building quite a lot of those, actually. Typically now centering on high-end residential hotels, that sort of thing.
Quite the place to do it.
It's the best place to build. It is the best place to build, for sure. So very exciting developers out there. And then as part of that journey, my boss, he wanted to not just be a general contractor, he wanted to branch out and diversify and grow adjacencies. So areas of the construction industry that sort of support our core business. So that could be mechanical, electrical, plumbing, infrastructure, high-end fit out. Very much with a technology focus as to how we can bring tech to pay. We've got sustainability in the background. It's quite a big thing for us, actually. And then so really sort of grow that, but really just in the UAE and Egypt, which are our core markets. But then akin to that, we're also doing real estate development in multi-centres. So in London, here in London, in Canada, in Cairo, and in the UAE as well. And that's quite a different beast. It does a lot of building for sure, but actually real estate development is quite a different skill and discipline. So plenty to keep us occupied. Our journey, when I started, we turned over about £625 million. Then the next year we turned over £1 billion. Then we turned over £1.5 billion, and we'll do £2 billion this year. So there's quite a accelerated growth journey in that period as well. But hopefully it gives you a bit of a snapshot into
amazing. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Innovo Group.
And so why Innovo Group? What was the challenge for you? What was the appeal for you? Why did you make that leap?
So I think you've got to buy into the vision.
Yeah.
And my boss Vistry is incredibly charismatic and is incredibly. So he spent his life in the built environment, and if you spend your life in the built environment in Dubai, where you're building the most amazing buildings, these guys know no boundaries, right? They have no boundaries as to what they can achieve. And he's taken that not just in buildings, but also what you can do in the corporate space.
Yeah.
So the vision is very compelling. Then you have to sense check, well, is it doable? Is it feasible? Can you actually deliver on that
With a
vision?
reasonable voice in the room.
Well, is it achievable? Or you just, it's a bit of a pipe dream and everybody can write a good story, but actually is there some substance? And then you meet the team that are there and you understand the talent that he's, assembled around him and work with him, and you think, yeah, actually this stands a really good chance. And then the last bit you think is, well, actually, can I contribute to that journey? The big one, I'm based in the UK and the bulk of my colleagues and the bulk of our business is out in the UAE today, that will grow. Can you have that level of traction that you want to have as a CFO? So can you actually make a difference? Can you help that business move forward?
And I guess the numbers are saying yes.
I'd like to think so. I know it's certainly not all down to me, but yes, yeah, it's definitely been useful to have a different perspective on occasions for sure.
But you've sort of mentioned previously that going to Innovo was sort of like going back to your commercial roots. What does that sort of look like in practice compared to your time at PLCs?
So for commercial, probably read entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
More than anything. So PLCs can be quite staid, quite rigorous, very full of governance, which you do need. And we're a large company, and that's great for making sure that you're in control and compliant, essentially. But it doesn't necessarily foster entrepreneurship. We talked about BP Alternative Energy. That was real entrepreneurship within a very big corporate. So we had no renewable energy talent sitting in BP. Lots of people who understood about oil and gas and downstream and retail, but nobody who understood wind farms or solar PV. And then simply we had no right to capital. So you don't go, I'd like to have my £1 billion a year to go and invest. You had to work really, really hard to prove that you were good custodians of the corporate check. And so that sort of entrepreneurship it's entrepreneurship, probably better, if there's such a word, where you have that sort of agility and that passion and that desire, with sort of no limits as well, because that's really what I think encapsulates entrepreneurship. They don't see boundaries; they just see opportunities. And you can do that within a corporate environment. And come into Innovo, you've although we're a young company, we have quite a big corporate presence and quite a strong core. But how can you grow these new, what we call adjacencies, these new business streams, in parallel to support not just grow volume, but also grow value for the group? And how can you get them from being zero to really quite substantial businesses quite fast? And that's the real excitement and the appeal. So it's probably more entrepreneur roots than commercial, but yeah.
So in that sort of journey, in that way of doing that sort of entrepreneurial leadership in the finance sector, what do you think are the sort of lessons that finance leaders who maybe aren't in those in that sort of sector, in that space, can take into their roles?
That's a good question. So the finance guys often get told we're the people that say no. You can't do that in an entrepreneurial business. It just goes really, really flat. So that you're just not in you're not getting the rhythm of the business at that point, and you become alienated pretty quickly. So a lot of it is how you put structure around the business, even though you want it to be agile. So you're supporting rather than being constricting, I think is probably the best way to do it. So you keep just your classic disciplines you have. That's finance. So you do your 5-year plan cycle and your budgeting cycle and your forecasts. But you don't make them so onerous that people feel they're not helping me drive the business forward. They're actually there to be supportive and to provide insight, because what most entrepreneurs like actually is, I think I'm doing the right thing on my own person, but I actually do value sensible input that helps them with their journey. So if you can take the sort of normal structures that finance people put in any organisation and use that to help and support those entrepreneurs and adapt it, then I think you can get a real engagement with the business and really help not drive it forward, but make sure as it's going forward, it's within a set of tram lines and not going to sort of like veer too far off the side.
Yeah, support rather than restrict.
Completely, yeah, definitely.
Have you got any sort of examples of where you've done that's worked really well that you can share?
Yeah, so when you're growing sort of incubator businesses that we call them, you tee them up in a way such that you enable this agility I talked to. And we had 5 incubators, and 3 survived.
Wow.
2 didn't. And that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Right? So there's not everyone has got to be a hero. It's okay if you're starting something new, you're doing something new. It's okay to fail, as long as you fail fast and learn fast. And all our businesses have failed along the way. But when you're small, failures, it's not a big thing. You can handle it when you're big and you fail. Well, that can be much more difficult to resolve. And so you have to create an atmosphere really where it's okay. We're going to discontinue some business lines because they haven't worked. But you don't want that to stop other people thinking, well, I want to try and take my bit of the business forward. So that's probably the best example. It's more that what you've stopped doing rather than necessarily, the heroes are easy. That's great.
Yeah.
You just set them back and they're off. But it's actually making those hard calls where you said, no, we're not going to pursue that business line anymore.
Does that require a lot of sort of cross-functional leadership, a lot of working with other members of the C-suite and
completely the whole growing a business at pace, you have to work as an executive. It's not one person. You need as many eyes as you can to solve the problem, because if you're growing or you're diversifying, you're doing something you've never done before. That's the nature of it. You're not being there. You're either at a volume you've never been at before, or you're into an area where you might load a vacation, but you don't know with the customers, but you don't know completely technically what you're doing, or you know what technically you're doing, but you don't know the location it is. And so if you try and do that on your own, which plenty of entrepreneurs do all the time, you stand an okay chance of success. But if you actually put all your best talent and minds and brains at it, then your chances of succeeding, I think, improve a lot. So definitely a team game.
In the fast-moving world of global finance, information is your most valuable currency and your best friend. Finance Chief gives you the ultimate digital briefing for finance leaders. From deep dive reports and interviews with successful leaders, crucial daily insights on the stories and information that matters, white papers and research, and, of course, podcasts. Why not move from just following the news to mastering the trends, reshaping the C-suite, and gain a competitive advantage for you and your business? Visit financechief.com to read our digital magazine, sign up to our newsletters and subscription content, and listen to more exclusive podcasts. Join us today and be part of our fast-growing community. We'll see you there.
Are those relationships different in a sort of entrepreneurial business where you're trying new things and where you're maybe more like ready for, not failure being the wrong word obviously, but ready to choose the paths that are succeeding and leave the ones behind that aren't, versus a sort of maybe more larger structured business, or do you find not so much?
Well, you're definitely going to have some very honest conversations.
Yeah.
The executive I joined had been together for a long time.
Right.
A very strong Egyptian core. So, but very welcoming. So I've got to kind of,
Great.
ingratiate myself into that sort of culture and style. But you are going to get honest conversations, because you don't have, if you're going to learn fast and fail fast, then you can't. The elephant in the room needs to be addressed. You can't sit there and talking about it. Clearly, there's a sensitivity with how you deal with the harsh messages, as you should be sensitive in dealing with the good messages. But no, you've got to have that openness. And I think we're a family business, and it's not family owned; it's family owned and run, which is very different. So the owners are my colleagues who are sitting on the exco, this is incredibly personal to them, and so they value support, but they want to move things forward, so they're not necessarily going to sit there and see their own sort of personal brainchild, if you like, not succeed. So
okay, so let's take a sort of step back then and talk about sort of like wider finance leadership. So obviously you're having this amazing career and doing incredibly well. You must have met some other incredible finance leaders. You must have also seen some finance leaders across the way who maybe you're watching make decisions that you might not make yourself. What to you makes a great finance leader? What defines great finance leadership? And how have you sort of seen that evolve over your career?
So I think finance, you have to be good at two things.
Yeah.
Right?
It's easy. Two things.
Two things. You have to get the compliance and the governance piece sorted. You've got no right to sit at the table and be a CFO advising on business strategy or business performance if you're not filing your tax returns on time, or you can't get your audited accounts out, or you can't talk to the stock market. So you have to do that piece. Now, nobody in the business should ever care about how I file my audited accounts. It just shouldn't be an issue. It should just get done. But you've got no right as a finance leader to have a seat at the table unless that bid is going smoothly. So, don't underestimate the level of effort and energy finance teams put into getting that bit right. But of all the things you have to get done, that's the first bit. So, and that won't change. And actually, as the world gets more complicated and governance gets more transparent and regulation becomes more onerous, that burden, if you like, of the compliance and governance just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you need to address that. The second piece is if you talk about business enabling. So the finance function always has owned effectively the data of any business, right? So we own, the performance management cycle. So you can, we like to describe it in I've won a project or whatever, but actually how that conversation comes out is, here we are against forecast, here's our backlog. So it all comes out in finance metrics. And we own that conversation. And as sort of, data has grown and the use of artificial intelligence has grown, actually the amount of now accessible data and analyzable data has just gone, exponentially in my career.
Yeah.
So, and finance has been at the forefront of this for a long, long time. So people, for a lot of people, AI is a new thing. Finance have been doing this for a long time. So you've had, ERPs, so electronic reporting platforms have been put in place. We've had data warehouses, we've had automatic diagnostics like MicroStrategy or Power BI. These tools have been around for a long time. And then it's incumbent on the finance people to really help manage that data flow into the decision makers, right? So there's quite a responsibility there.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine you're doing the performance management cycle and you've got a board meeting. Now we've got 8 people on our board, right? All very, very intelligent people with huge amounts of business experience. If we put some data up in front of them and it's just a whole bunch of data with no real analysis or insight, we're going to get 8 different opinions and the meeting will be working out what on earth the data says, right? Actually, by the time it gets to the board, it needs to be curated. So it needs to be managed so that the board can then, make a decision about actually what's important. But deciding what's important actually falls on finance, not just on finance, but just manage the message. But you have to be out there, and this is all levels of the organization. Taking all this data, creating this analysis, creating an insight and verifying it, and then being able to challenge back to the business as to where you go. So, really strong finance leadership for me is where that bit is coming to the fore. So get the day job, get the compliance as slick as you can, because you've got to do that. But how are you helping the business move forward? Because you own that data, you own the management information, you own the performance management cycle. And if you're not doing it, nobody else is. The head of HR is not setting the budget for next year. The individual business units, they're off doing their own thing, but they're not looking necessarily at other business units because it's not in their remit. So you've got a responsibility there as finance to own that space.
And going back a tiny step, I just want to sort of dig into AI. So not a new thing for the finance function, but very much has exploded for sort of everyone else over the past couple of years or so.
Yeah.
Has that changed the way that you're using AI in your role? Have you seen your teams change the way they use AI, or has it just sort of increased capabilities as the models have matured?
So I think most finance places would say we'd love to use AI, but we really need to get our data sorted first, cleansed, right? That's the
sort your foundations before you build your house.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And most organisations I've been in the last 10 years have really been in that space. I know a lot of construction companies that, when they're implementing AI, the first thing they do is clean up their own data. They don't try and import anybody else's. They've got all the answers to every problem they've ever got within their own, already sitting on a disk somewhere.
Yeah.
So we're going through that exercise now.
Okay.
If you talk to our CIO, and she will go, everybody talks to me about AI and application, and yes, we'll get there, but that's an application. We need to clean that. We need to clean that data at first, and then once you've got that and you've got that solid foundation, then AI can really help. Now, clean the data now. Actually, you can use AI.
Yeah.
So it's a lot quicker than it would have been sort of 10 years ago. But you definitely need to do it first.
Looking to the future, once you've cleared that data, once you've gone on that side of the journey, what do you expect for the future of finance and AI? Do you have any sort of expectations? Can you make any predictions?
So I think as a function, traditionally, so if you, I mean, you're new to finance, but if you break finance as an organization into three core parts, you've got sort of processing and reporting, which is sort of commoditized area. That's the most visible piece. That's the bit that pays your expenses. That's the bits that pay salaries. That's the bits that raises invoices, creates your general ledger accounting, reporting, and that's your sort of traditional accounting. Then you've got your control that write out what the policies are and make sure the procedures and processes in place that your business is operating in a controlled fashion, you're minimizing fraud, etc. And then you've got FP&A. And FP&A is financial planning and analysis. And I would challenge that most people in FP&A are actually really doing FP&R. So they're doing financial planning and reporting. So they spend 90% of their time writing the report and maybe 10% of the time thinking about it. What AI will do will just change that completely. So you will spend very little time in writing the report. You spend all your time thinking about it. And that's actually quite a different skill set. So if you imagine you're a traditional finance person, you're in accounting, you're presenting your PowerPoint slides and your analysis is a step up from accounting, but it's quite. We're spending a lot of time with spreadsheets, and you're spending a lot of time, creating PowerPoints. But if you don't have to do that, that skill's no longer important in your job. You've now got to then say, well, I've got to create some analysis. So I've got AI. It's not a question of how quickly can I get the answer out. It's about what question do I ask, right? So what question am I going to ask? Then I've got that question, and I've got a bit of insight come out. How do I corroborate that insight? So remember, I'm finance here, and I think I've uncovered the holy grail to what's going to change the business. Well, I can't keep it to myself, and I probably don't want to, be in a meeting and say finance says this. I want to go out there and talk to the business, and make sure that what I think, or my analysis, or my insight is actually the correct one, and it's not leading the business down a garden path. Remember, we've got that responsibility to curate information and for the decision makers, and then finally, I've got to be able to challenge. So I've actually got to turn around to the business and say, have you maybe thought about doing it this way? Maybe the way you were wedded to isn't the best way to do it, because computer says this, right? And that's a different skill as well. So you've taken that element of the finance function. So controls will always stay. The processing piece, that will stay. You'll be different systems and different, but that's all going to stay. But your FP&A is probably the area that's going to change, because now you're going to be required to do real analysis and insight, and there's no excuse now about, I spent the whole week producing the report rather than actually thinking about it. You really now are thinking about it, and so the skills around how do I talk to the business, how do I sense check my own analysis, what question do I ask in the first place? I think that's going to become more and more relevant. So
do you think the skills that will be required of a future finance leader are going to be quite different to the skills required today?
They're definitely going to be enhanced.
Yeah.
In that area. Yeah, absolutely. When I started out as an accountant, and I'm not a particularly traditional accountant, but when I started out, finance was tongue from accounts.
Cool.
You were kind of almost a bookkeeper, and the CFO was very much a commercial person who didn't really understand about reporting at all.
Yeah.
Then, in the 2000s, you had WorldCom and Enron, and then all of a sudden you had a lot of extra governance and discipline around finance, and then it became really quite technical. And so the raw accountants, or the proper accountants, actually came to bear, and CFOs were sort of moved out. You couldn't be a generalist anymore. You actually needed to have that real core technical discipline and background. And then again, that's sort of almost moving away now, that technical requirement, because now actually you've automated a lot of that.
Yeah.
And now actually you need to get back into being that real commercial partner for the business.
Well, a journey. We're all on a journey, aren't we?
We're all on that.
Okay, so I'd love to dig a bit more in, because you're operating across quite a lot of different markets: UK, UAE, Egypt, Canada, and obviously on that sort of growth path. How are you not just designing but also delivering that sort of capital allocation framework that allows and benefits those different economic models?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So so it's capital and probably resource allocation as well.
Yeah.
So the construction business is actually capital light.
Mm-hmm.
We have the £2 billion we're going to deliver this year in revenue, and then the associated profit at sort of roughly 5-6% margin. That doesn't require a huge amount of capital behind it. It needs some. So you need to have staff accommodation camps, you need to have scaffolding, big bits of plant and machinery. But actually, relative to the revenue, it's really quite capital light. As a young business, we had a very small balance sheet, and we needed to grow it. So we can't, pay dividends to shareholders at the moment, for example.
Yeah.
That will come in later years. And so we need to take our profit earnings and then reinvest it.
Mm-hmm.
So these are profits we could pay as dividends, but we don't to sort of retain it in the company. And one of the best ways of deploying that is in real estate development. And so then you're getting into real capital allocation. But the risk profile of, say, Toronto to central London to Dubai to Cairo, they're all quite different, right? We use an internal rate of return view. So this is a financial metric that effectively allows us to assess how efficient we are at deploying capital. So if I deploy £1, when do I get £2 back?
Yeah.
Roughly. But we'll have different hurdle rates depending on location. So if I'm in an area where there's high inflation, or like Cairo, or potentially more economic instability, then I'm going to require a higher internal rate of return than, say, one that's much more stable. So London, central London, for example, not a huge amount of positive press around the economy here in the UK, but it's quite stable. It's not necessarily an economy that you want to say is stable,
Yeah.
but it is quite stable, right? So if you can make it work, it's pretty bankable, right? The UAE, up until the 28th of February, you probably said this is really stable as well. And then all of a sudden there's a massive shock to the system, big regional conflict. And then actually I think at the end, UAE would come out even stronger and more stable, actually, because it's kind of properly being tested and has passed with flying colours, frankly. So you're weighing up all those disciplines. So you're always led by opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you get a piece of, in real estate, if you've got a nice piece of land, and what can you put on it? But when you make that assessment to deploy in Canada or the UAE or Cairo or London, it's very much on what are the expected returns for that market, and is it suitable?
And if we look specifically at the more volatile or high inflation markets like Cairo, how does your strategic approach differ? Do you have any sort of advice, learnings, or anything from working specifically in those sort of markets?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a strong Egyptian heritage and legacy. So and obviously some great contacts out there. The family and families, because there's lots of Egyptians that work with us. So we've got very strong cultural ties.
Yeah.
And importantly for the group, Egypt's a source of talent for the rest of the group. It's not just an opportunity to build and invest, right? So we do try and take that link about the talent we're able to access in Egypt, and then how you can deploy that talent sort of more broadly within the group. So it's a great sort of talent pool, if you like.
Great.
We have quite a big construction business in Egypt. We don't really want to put any hard currency in, because there is a high currency devaluation and high inflation. But we do make money in Egyptian pounds. And so what we do is we actually cycle those Egyptian pounds into real estate investments in Cairo. So we kind of treat it almost like a closed cycle economy. And we will, if you're only really exposed if you're having to buy product from outside.
Right.
So international product, that's the only exposure. But as a builder, typically, if we think that's going to happen, we can pass that on to the developer. If we're the developer, maybe we take that risk, but maybe we can sell our building on in hard currencies to try and hedge that bet. But we'll treat Egypt very much as a sort of closed economy. So we are generating lots of Egyptian pounds. How do we, again, we don't necessarily want to take it out. How can we deploy that better? And real estate is a good opportunity there.
Amazing. And is there a particular, obviously looking to the future, you've mentioned some markets you're pushing more towards, like Canada. Is there a reason for those choices in those areas now?
So Canada's probably been on hold for us at the moment. So we're in the GTA, so the Greater Toronto area, and we've got 4 assets out there, and sort of one's being developed and the second one's just starting, and 2 are pretty much shelved because structurally the market needs to change quite a lot there, and that's quite unique for Canada and the GTA. Canada has very similar dynamics to, say, the UK, as in it is a big G7 stable economy with housing demand that far outstrips supply.
Yeah.
So the fundamentals of the market make sense, and then you're really just waiting for the market to get confident to be able to take that. But land is always a good bet in most markets if you can sit on it. If you don't have debt on it and you can sit on it and you're prepared to wait it out, it will usually come good in those sort of type of environments. So.
And looking to the future, are there any particular markets you're looking to break into that you can share?
No, we'll stick with the 4, and we got teams up and running, and they see lots of opportunity. So if we've got any spare discretionary capital, they love it. It takes quite a long time to get to know a market, so you really have to invest in a lot of specialised talent. So I mean, we're here in London now. The area that we're looking for residential, which is sort of zone 1.5, is very different from zone 5.
Yes.
Right. So your clients are different, your subcontractors are different, your land pricing is different, and unless you really understand that market very well, you're very unlikely to succeed. So it takes quite a long time to pull together the team that has that real deep understanding and specialism in the market. So it's quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But you can do it, but you've got to be able to go and attract local talent to come and work with you.
Amazing. I love this sort of theme of people that's really underpinning all your work. It's that communications piece, that talent piece.
100%.
Amazing. So I'm conscious we could natter on for hours, but I want to sort of try and round us out with a piece of advice, because you've had this amazing career through BP, Maersk, Imperial, all those sort of big brands. You've come into this really entrepreneurial sort of pinnacle. What would you say is the number one lesson you've learned on your sort of journey, or piece of advice that you'd have for other CFOs today, 2026?
So I think if there's one, it's probably not so much what you do, it's more how you do it. If you are, I mean, I've had the privilege to move into really quite different organisations and different cultures at senior positions. So on a personal level, that's been incredibly challenging. But unless you can get on with your colleagues or understand the culture you're arriving into and work within it, it's going to be a very short-lived experience. Actually, if you're going to get anything done, you've actually got to be able to get on with people, and so how you do things is as important as what you do in my mind. It is just a reflection on having moved around a bit. I have seen people who have, arrived in organisations and there's almost been an allergic reaction to them.
Yeah.
Right. And they sort of arrive and they've got a very set way of doing things, which might be very good and very added, but it's, for whatever reason, it just doesn't jive with the rest of the organisation. And if you're going to get the rest of the organisation to fit to your tune, it's probably going to take a bit of time, and people have to widely respect and like you pretty quickly. And most organisations take time to get used to individuals, certainly senior individuals. So my bit of advice would be pay as much attention to how you do things rather than just what you do.
I love that. Well, what a great thing to sort of round us off on. And Tom, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today.
Thank you, Jill.
You've been listening to the Finance Chief podcast, brought to you by BizClick. Thank you to Tom for pulling back the curtain and sharing not just the strategy, but the story behind the role. It's a reminder that even in an era of AI factories and global scale, it is the people that are truly making the difference. I'm Charlie King, Senior Editor of Sustainability Magazine, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the lives of finance professionals from around the world, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you for welcoming me as a guest host, and I look forward to the next episode.